Doug Koop, who is a certified spiritual health practitioner who has been working at HSC since 2013, primarily on acute medicine and intensive care units. His previous career was in journalism, and he continues to publish freelance articles, including a series of columns in the Winnipeg Free Press, reflecting on spiritual health in the hospital during the COVID-19 lockdowns. And so today he's here to speak with us about spiritual health services, hits, and myths. So take it away, Doug.
Well, good day, everyone. I work at the Health Sciences Center, a place that can be where science is highly revered and where spiritual care can be something of an outlier. Our mandate expands beyond the purely physical or material to focus on the human spirit. This approach can be rather different than the hard, data-driven, task-oriented, fix-it-mode mentality of much modern medicine. Today, I'm going to address a few common misconceptions about the work that my colleagues and I are doing. That would be the myths. And I'm going to mention a few areas where we contribute helpfully to the well-being of patients, family, and staff. That would be the hits. And I will speak about a part that everyone who works here can play to enhance the hospital experience of all concerned. I begin with the word spirituality, which itself is a plastic word and as such can stand for just about anything that anyone thinks it might mean. Absent a common definition, each of us tends to project our own ideas onto the subject. For spiritual care providers, it means we end up being perceived differently by different people. Trying to pin this discipline down is like spreading cold butter on soft bread. It leads to uneven results. What's also true is that the profession of spiritual care itself is evolving. So I begin with the myths and address a few common misconceptions about the role my colleagues and I serve as part of the Allied Health Multidisciplinary Team. The first I'll mention is that it's only for the religious. Religions are a very important subset of spirituality. Religions provide frameworks for understanding, rituals for processing, and guidelines for living that benefit many and provide deep solace. Yet, not everyone is religious or has any desire to connect with a person they consider to be a religious emissary. So, as happens from time to time, I'll be introduced to a patient whose first response is to dismiss me by saying, "I'm not religious." And my standard reply is simply to ask, "Well, are you human?" This is the common ground. Each of us is capable of being in compassionate relationship with any of our fellow beings. It's said that we're human beings on a spiritual journey, and it may also be said that we are spiritual beings on a human journey. Spiritual health services is about accompanying people who are searching for meaning in the face of whatever they are dealing with, especially with those who are suffering. No religion required. Another common misconception closely related to this one, a subset I guess it would be, is that it's only for Christians. Now, the social landscape has changed significantly in the past few decades, and the spiritual health profession in Canada is growing beyond its roots in the Christian chaplaincy model. Practitioners are now multi-faith responders, and truth be told, spend much of our time with people who have no apparent faith commitments. We do not judge the belief or non-belief worldviews of anyone. And while many of us hew to one religion or another for spiritual sustenance in our private lives, we do not project that onto others. We bring no faith-specific agendas. We're here for all. Some people tend to think that spiritual health services are only for the dying or the grievously ill. Occasionally, a room becomes off limits to me or one of my colleagues because the patient construes the arrival of a person introducing themselves as spiritual as a bad omen, an intimation of the grim reaper. This happens from time to time. Patients in those rooms do not want people like me around to remind them of their mortality. We can have a frightening effect on people. And it is true that a lot of our work does involve end-of-life situations, yet our scope of practice is much broader. Among other things, we encourage holistic life practices for patients, family, and staff. We teach spiritual health principles and practices to healthcare students and professionals. We facilitate communications between family, patients, and staff. It may come as a surprise to some that spiritual health services are not solely a hospital phenomenon. Spiritual health practitioners also hang out in mental health facilities, personal care homes, the corrections systems, the military, educational institutions, airports, corporate settings, and in private practice and beyond. Recently, I've been speaking with managers at the Assiniboine Park Conservancy about grief support for zookeepers. Wherever there are human beings, practitioners who pay attention to the hopes and fears of others will have opportunities to connect in ways that help make the world a better place. Spiritual health practicing is not only for patients, as some people seem to think. In this hospital, spiritual health practitioners understand that we are available for patients, their families, and for staff. So please do not hesitate to approach any of us if you could use a dose of compassionate presence. Finally, on the misconception side, is the notion that spiritual health services is simply an extra. Spirituality is an essential aspect of our humanity. Any person's spiritual health profoundly impacts physical health, well-being, and quality of life. Institutions that take whole person care seriously do well to embrace that reality and have practitioners around to make sure it's given due consideration. Spiritual health is not an extra, it's integral. So now I'm going to turn from the myths and mention a few hits. As spiritual health practitioners, we know we're doing our job well when our services help to foster connection. Relationship is essential to our humanity. People seek company like flower seeks the sun. We invariably wither when we are separated or alienated from others. At the exact center of the human personality is a capacity to give and receive in relationship, a capacity or possibility that defines what it means to be alive as a human being. Spirituality may be a notoriously difficult concept to define, yet certain similarities consistently appear amidst the welter of attempts to explain the essence of the inexplicable. Spirituality always concerns the search for purpose and meaning and the need for relationship. This yearning for connection is either implicitly or explicitly present in every definition of human spirituality or effort to describe the realm of the human spirit. One definition, for example, from a social work document puts it this way: spirituality is experienced through relationships, and those relationships may be with an external or higher source, or they may be proximate. For example, sources of spiritual strength may be experienced through families, friends, or communities. Our work is to find points of connection to promote human flourishing. One of the ways we hope to do that is by achieving optimal intimacy. Now, the concept of optimal distance has countless intuitive applications in the material world. People rarely race for up-close seats at a big screen theater. Further back provides superior perspective. From television sets to computer monitors to artwork and more, human beings constantly withdraw or draw nearer to gain a better experience, all of which expresses an innate desire to find an optimal experience. And these same undercurrents apply in human relationship. In posture, we are comfortable being physically close with friends, yet create space around people we don't know. Similar dynamics occur when we talk about getting close on the emotional and spiritual planes. These are precisely the places where spiritual health practitioners work to bring health. We yearn not for optimal distance, but for optimal intimacy. We want to draw near enough to know another person well enough to be a welcome guide without violating personal autonomy, either ours or theirs, to be both properly assertive and properly differential at every level of being. This is akin to a journalist who has enough background information to ask the right questions to the right people, who must then listen carefully to the responses and represent them accurately with enough perspective so that the final story is fair and reasonably comprehensive. Care providers aim to adopt a posture, a way of tuning into the spirit of another person, of being neither too close nor too far at either the physical or emotional level. It requires an acute sense of self-awareness, the skills of active listening, and a multidisciplinary approach to discernment. It means engaging another person with a generous spirit and appropriate detachment, not letting the burrs of someone else's sorrow, loss, or dysfunction stick to the sleeve of my wool sweater. Optimal intimacy is the sweet spot of our craft. Shock and awe. The phrase shock and awe burst into public consciousness during the Gulf War when the United States bombarded Iraq with massive displays of firepower and a sense of overwhelming might. I'm using it because shock and awe can provide some insight into the mixture of both suffering and solace. People in suffering situations are often overwhelmed. Sometimes they're in actual medical shock, the body's response to a sudden or violent mental or emotional experience, when a person needs to shut out aspects of the immediate simply in order to cope. Yet, suffering at many levels splinters into shards of shock. Many of our calls address the issues of how to cope when life is overwhelming. Awe in this context is not about terrorizing fear. Rather, it is a sense of the numinous, some assurance that elements of the holy are present in even the most dire of circumstances. Wee glimpses of beauty and transcendence offer moments of deep consolation, even in the midst of other agonies. In situations where we're dazed, we should also be prepared to be amazed. Through personal and professional experience, I've come to believe that wherever shock and distress abide, awe and solace are in the wings. A key part of the spiritual health calling is to come alongside people in distress where the work we do can help soften the suffering. Spiritual health practitioners know we're doing our job when we help connect or reconnect people with others in their lives, help them connect the dots in their own psyche and come to greater peace with the vagaries of the universe. We do this well when we attain optimal intimacy, frequently in shocking conditions where the awe is more awful than awesome. Those are a few of the hits for spiritual health practitioners. This is Spiritual Health Awareness Week, and I want to acknowledge that every staff member who interacts with other people in this workplace has an effect on the spirits of those around them. We either lift spirits by engaging well, or deflate them by giving people less attention than they deserve. Each encounter with the other is, at one level, a spiritual exchange. With that in mind, I want to tip my hat and offer profound appreciation to the countless workers who are serving well and encourage each of us to recognize the impact we can have, for better or for worse, on the attitudes of those around us. I've come to believe that unit assistants and healthcare aides are among the most practiced players in this game. Their work with patients requires them to deal intimately with strangers, to manage the messes and discomforts of people who are living an experience way beyond their comfort zones. And the fact that aides do this so often and engender trust in those in their care is a credit to their skills. More than a few patients have been profoundly blessed by the gentle, compassionate care they receive in what would otherwise be their most embarrassing moments. So thank you for your service. Also think about the housekeepers, probably the largest single department, this quiet armada of individuals who are both everywhere and invisible. How essential, how uplifting when they do their jobs. There are too many specializations and occupations to mention each one. The multidisciplinary teams on the medical units where I hang out include social work, OT, PT, home care, SLP, not to mention the nurses on whose shoulders this place operates, or the transport team that ferries people to appointments. Physicians are important too. The point is that every individual who works here affects the spiritual temperature of this place. Are you generally among those who lift spirits? I hope so. It's a better way to live. Spiritual health practitioners provide a compassionate presence with patients, family, and staff. We offer support to people from any faith or worldview in order to help clarify their spiritual and emotional needs and respond in ways that promote human flourishing. We rarely fix anything. Rather, we listen carefully to help people discover resources they didn't know they had to deal with these problems they wish they didn't. We reflect their questions about purpose and meaning in their lives, listening carefully while inviting them to explore their hopes and fears. Our commitment is to celebrate the possibilities of life and stay attuned to the suffering. So thank you. May your spirits be encouraged as you go about the business of improving health, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual.